Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity. Your support really does make a huge difference. You'll find a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org/contribute. Thank you so much.
Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Hello, everyone. Looks like we've got, focus. Can we focus on me? Okay. Looks like we've got a nice intimate group here. I was wondering how many would be ready after y'all's retreat. I heard a little bit of chit chat when I first joined about somebody mentioned like, yes, it is called an intensive for a reason. And that's always been my experience. Sometimes tuckered out. So thank you all for joining. Hello, Trudy. Okay, so it looks like we've got a small enough group that with what I was hoping to cover for the new sewist today, that we do have plenty of time for check-ins. So I'm actually, since Maria is the monitor, she's always going to show up first. So I don't want to always call on her first for my screen, you know, kind of going in order. So I'm going to skip you this time, Maria, so that you get a little respite from that. Oh, okay. Do you want to go first? You may go first. Okay. Well then, Claire, you're first up on my screen. Will you do a quick check-in?
Thanks, John. So I am sewing around the very edge of the frame. I've done the middle lines. And so I will keep doing that this class, and then I can't make the next two classes. So at some point later in the class, when you've done instruction for the new guys and you have some freer time, I might make sure that I understand the next step for the squares so that I can do that in my own time before I can join the Sunday class again.
Okay, yeah, sure. Would you like, are you suggesting just a one-on-one or on one of the classes 2 weeks from now or more?
Just later in this class, because I can keep sewing around the outside
sure.
while you do the check-in and while you give instruction to the new guys, but then later this class there might be a moment, just because it's not a time, I don't need to know the information to be able to progress right now.
Understood. Thank you. Yeah, can do that. Marla?
I made a foray in my new city to find a fabric store where I could buy some broadcloth because I've decided to return to my practice stitches. So I'm still working on my frame, and I just decided to make this big deal about it. In search of broadcloth. And so I'm excited about that because my old stitching thing got so full I couldn't stitch anymore. So.
Well, wonderful. Well,
I'm doing great. Thanks.
Okay, great. Rosemary, how about you?
Hi. So I'm almost what Claire is, but not quite. I'm on the middle line, and I have one more side to do on that. Then I've got to do the outside. So I'd be very interested to do the squares with to watch the demonstration of the squares with Claire. We're just about at the same point. So I'm good. Thank you.
Great. Sure. Julia and Jan.
For me, this has been a wonderful sharing experience. First of all, Trudy, thank you so much for the silk, this silk. and it's the right colour. And I am sharing the silk that Trudy has been using for Catherine's robe. So this just feels like we're stitching in to each other, and that's really important. So thank you for that. And just earlier today, I came to sit with Jan, and she's helped me. I'd already cut the pieces out at the end of the last session, and she's just helped go through me with pinning it together. So because I was looking at the instructions and really struggling with it, and I like coming somewhere knowing what I'm doing.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and again, a lovely intimate time. So yes, really important. Thank you.
Great. Jane?
So yeah, it's really lovely to actually sit in a room with somebody and be able to talk about the work and physically see somebody's work. I think really can see that we've not had that, and it's really precious actually to be here together in the room and look at each other's stitches and discuss it. That's been really lovely. I'm at exactly the same place as Claire as well, and like her and Rosemary, I'd be really keen to hear about the next step of working on the little squares. So that would really fit for me as well, if we could do that at some point later on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shelley, how about you?
I have tried to cut apart my face, and I'm a little bit confused on one side because the picture that I think we're seeing in the lines that we're on don't seem to quite match to me. So I hope I haven't messed anything up already. I'm really excited to see the demonstration today about how to do the pinning. I looked at the paper versions that you sent, and I don't think I quite get it. So looking forward.
Sure. Great. Before we actually move on, I think Trudy's just the last to check in. Can you actually clarify, Shelley, what the concern about the cutting?
There seem to be more lines drawn for section 5. Like there was an X on 2 separate lines, but that leaves me a piece of fabric that doesn't seem to do anything. And I didn't know if it was extra, and the version didn't, like the paper diagram didn't show that. So what I understood from last time is anything that had an X on it, you would cut.
Yeah, or the dotted lines on the, I think what may have happened, and check with me if does this sound correct. If I remember correctly, the ones that you received and the ones that Gabriella received, who's not with us, she's traveling right now, but I hope she's going to listen to this. Y'all's will have possibly a little bit of extra on the edge that was just where I drew straight lines to measure. So if you look at the 5-piece, let me get out a diagram and my camera. So I need to wipe my camera lens. Let me switch to a little closer up. So you're talking about on this edge, there's extra fabric beyond this last line that's in the drawing?
No, the extra is between the dotted line and let me see if I can show you. Can you see this? So to me, the extra is in here on this side.
So I think that looks correct to me. So that the edge that is on the left side would be, let me try to, on the diagram.
This seems like the edge of the bolt to me.
So that is that the outermost edge, the outside, like the edge of the fabric piece itself is this line here, I believe.
Correct.
That's what it looks like to me. Then this line. Then I see this line here, and I do see this line and this line. Will you
So
hold it
it's-
closer?
Yeah, it tells me to cut this line, but then that leaves this piece.
How many chalk lines? I'm having a hard time seeing how many chalk lines there are on that left edge. Will you?
There are 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, count. Yeah, will you count left to right, if you will?
Okay, so
so-
from that cut line,
Uh-huh.
there are 1, 2, 3, 4 before I get to the 5B.
Interesting. What do you have on the right edge of 1B? Do you have that with you?
I do. I have I have, just a minute, 1B,
Mhm.
then I have another big square, and then I have a little square. So I have that correct. That is correct.
But do you have this bit here on your 1B piece?
I think so. Yes, I do.
So left to right, you have 1,
1,
2,
2,
3.
3. Yes. 1, 2,
lines.
3 in a cut line.
Interesting. It's possible I threw in an extra one here.
I think
Although-
you did, but I wasn't going to cut until I made sure.
Wow. So just to confirm, and all of your pieces have the have seam allowance on both the right and left edges.
Yes.
All, wow, that must be what happened. Thank you for checking. That's I know I was in a hurry, but I didn't think I was in that much of a hurry.
Well, you were making
interesting.
sure I paid attention, John.
Yes, that's the practice, isn't it? Thank
It
you for
is.
noticing my teaching. That's humor for anyone who did not catch that. I was not being serious. So I actually have this on video, so I could actually go back and look. So maybe I'll do that if we have a spare moment and go confirm. For now, for today's class, you can start, I'll be demonstrating the pinning. So you can move forward with pinning. You can cut your B's from A's if you haven't done so on all your other pieces.
Yeah.
And then I can go back and check these and make sure we're clear.
Excellent.
I have video evidence of exactly what I did.
Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for letting me check. Okay, and Trudy, how?
We did get to see each other's Rakasus at the retreat because people bought them in mostly, and that, as Jan said, to actually see the work, that was a good thing. And I'm still on the envelope and just making sure that the seam is turned so that it's just a little line of the outer on the inside, as it were, just ironing that to make sure that the seam is only visible on the silk side.
Yes, okay, so still on the ironing and folding,
Yes.
Reversing, great.
Yes.
Great. And do you have any questions about the next step, aligning those?
I'm
that were around me?
absolutely certain I will, but I'll do the ironing, and then when I get there, I'll ask you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's everyone.
From me, John.
Yes, Maria. Yes, sorry.
It's because you're so used to me going first, you see. So
I overthought this.
yeah, first I've got 3 apologies. Duncan apologises he can't come today, and Lynn Moore is unable to come, and Lynn Flocky, it's her brother's 70th today, so she's very busy with all kinds of preparations for that today. So she's unable to come today as well, but they all wanted to send their apologies.
Thank you.
But yeah, I'm in the same place as Rosemary and Jan, I think, more or less, where I'm sewing the middle line still. I'm on the last middle line, and it was lovely. Claire suggested that we bring our Rakasus to the retreat that we had, to the intensive that we had, and I just noted my reaction. I was like, oh, what, people are actually going to see it? And I actually didn't bring it in the end, and I used the excuse that I wasn't quite sure how to travel with it. That I thought, would it be all right just on top of me me packaging and things, but I'm sure it would have been. But yeah, and just looking at other people's work, how perfect it is. Oh my goodness, it's just so beautiful the way people are stitching the Rakasus. I noticed mine are more irregular than their Rakasus. I had my comparing mine switch straight on as soon as I was looking at them, and theirs were just so perfect, and mine isn't as as perfect. But I mean, it's just like some of my stitches are a little bit bigger than others, and that's it really. That's where it kind of, and I don't know why that keeps happening. There's like an irregularity that happens when I'm stitching, but I'm just being with that and kind of looking at that and deciding whether I need to change the middle line that I've sewn around the outer, because it has gone slightly bigger than the rest of the Rakasu. And after looking at those beautiful Rakasus at the weekend, it does look so much better if you keep them really small, you know, and consistent. It was a lovely look to the whole thing. But yeah, so just kind of being with that comparing mind and looking at theirs, looking at mine, and wondering if I do need to make changes or not, but just noticing all the reaction when Claire said to bring it. It was a lovely probe, Claire. It was quite a good
Well, could I just share that when I look at my Rakasu, I perceive it how you've just described yours. I see stitches of different length and of varying distance between them. And I am really, for the first time, seeing that is true, and also that it's perfect, because that's the way it is and that's the way it came out.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? How, because we're the ones sewing it, we see those little imperfections and we see those, but when looking at somebody else's, my perfectionist mind isn't there. It just isn't this a beautiful piece of work. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, it's something really good to just notice. Yeah, so thank you. It was a really good exercise, and it really kind of started some processes off in me that was really useful. So I was really grateful for you suggesting that. So thank you. And we've got Sue coming through now, John.
And
I wanted
Marie, did you have anything else to add?
No, I think that's it, because I'll just be continuing to sew round. It seems to be taking me a long time to sew this middle line, but that's just the way it's going, I think. And
It's a lot of stitches.
Yeah, so that's why I'm still doing that. So that's me. So thank you.
And Sue, well, thank you for joining in.
Yeah, thank you. I haven't started my stitching yet. I'm really quite eager to do it and to get started. So yes, thank you.
Great. And have you had a chance to cut out the individual panels from the face material? Great. Very good. Well, that's everyone. And okay, so I guess then let's begin. So my intent for today was to cover the pinning of the face pieces. And it sounds like, Julia, you're actually you're ahead. Jan was able to assist you, and that's great. This is often something that is challenging to grasp for folks. So any assistance that we can get to that end is excellent. Let me get my stuff set up. Okay. So I'm going to demonstrate with the, actually, before I begin, there's a couple of common truths, a couple of things that will always be true when we're talking about pinning pieces for the face. And I want to get those out of the way. And I did this in the previous group, and I think it is worth doing again. If you're a note taker and you like taking notes of, you know, the top tips for things to do, this is a really excellent time. Or these are the things I would suggest writing. So there's a couple of things that are always true. So first, the A piece is always on top of the B piece, and it's also what do I mean by the top? I'll get to that in a second, but just know in the abstract literal sense of the sentence, A piece is always on top of B piece. In practice, I'm talking about making the rice field, making the terraced rice paddies that the A piece is going to physically, whoops, where's my work in progress one? Okay, here it is. So you can see this seam here is on top of this seam here. And everywhere you can see the shadow, that is indicating that this piece is physically on top of the piece below it. And so all of these pieces are A pieces. So A piece, B piece, A piece, B piece, and same on the edges. Yeah, A piece, B piece. So A is always on top of B. That is one of the first two common truths about this pinning process. And that's something that's, I missed the memo on. This is my Rakasu that I'm wearing. You can see that I made that mistake. So mistakes do happen, and I wear it proudly. So A is always on top of B. That's the first thing that you can kind of, take that to the bank, so to speak. You can count on that. And the other piece is second line of the top piece to the first line of the bottom piece, which sounds like code for, some sort of strange dance or something. But I promise that is meaningful. So I'm arranging this piece here. This is how the piece was when it was cut. So this fabric was connected on this cut line. So when I say first line, I'm referring to the first line away from the cut line. So on the B piece, the first line is here. On this A piece, the first line is here. It's not referring to the distance from the label. It's referring to the distance from the cut line. If you have questions about where that cut line is, do refer back to the original diagram. So you have your cut line. And so on both sides of the cut line, you have a first line of the A piece and first line of the B piece. And you have a second line of the A piece and second line of the B piece. So to reiterate, the A piece is always on top. And the second line of the top piece goes to the first line of the bottom piece. So that's real abstract. I'm sure that may sound like gibberish, but it could be a handy reference once you actually get into the process of pinning. And I'll show you how. So starting with 1A and 1B, just because 1 is a nice number to start with. I'm going to describe what I call the pinch and lift method. The way that these are attached is not immediately intuitive. So simply do as I do. Align with your cut line in the middle so that you have your pieces as they were originally given to you before you cut. And begin to pinch the fabric together and try to make it so that they both rise up off of the table surface. As you can see here, I've pinched them together so both pieces are coming upward. And then lift it up off the table. And so I'm going to start with the A piece showing. So I have the B piece is now, so the wrong sides, the non-marked sides are now back to back. And the chalk line sides are on the outside. So let me go back to what I said before. The A piece is always on top of the B piece. And the second line of the top piece goes to the first line of the B piece. And here is what I mean by that. So there is the first line of the B piece. Here is the second line of the A piece. And I'm going to separate these just so you can see. Normally you would not do this, but you can see here, they're still aligned. There's the edge of the B piece and here's the edge of the A piece. So I'm going to slide this A piece, the top piece, so that the second line of the top piece is going to go to the first line of the B piece. And let me expose that B piece so you can see what I mean. So see how there is the first line of B. When I release this, you could visually follow that that is roughly aligning with that first line of A. If you have your paper stapled diagrams, unfold it from the way that you first received it. You should have received it kind of flattened out so you can see it all the chalk lines. Go ahead and flatten it. And if you place it side by side, you can see that this is the same. What we have on the right and what we have on the left are the same. And if I even, how do I demonstrate this? So there's that second line of the A piece on the front, second line of the A piece on the front. And I'm going to just flip this directly. And I'm also going to flip this directly, and you can see just the same. You have exposed part of A piece and then an exposed part of the A piece for both pieces. And you have this first line of the B piece aligned with the second line of the A piece. And likewise, first line of B is roughly going to the first line of A. So that is the basic check on how this is done. Let me make sure I have it. I believe I have a reference where the A piece is longer than the B piece. I do. Look at how prepared that is. So I'm going to take 1 away and I'm going to pull out 4 because 4 has a long A piece and a short B piece. And I'm going to demonstrate that it looks different. You'll have this on recording so you can refer back to it, that though it looks different, the principles are identical. So again, I'm aligning these cut line to cut line before it was cut. So this would have been the cut line joining the 2 pieces. Just as before, the A piece is always on top and the B piece is always on bottom. And the second line of the top piece always goes to the first line of the bottom piece. So I'm going to rotate so it's more convenient for me. And I'm going to pinch so that the fabric pushes against each other, like you're forming a mountain range, and these are tectonic plates if you're a geology nerd. So I pinch and then I lift, and then I'm going to fold it so that the A side is facing. Uh-oh, where'd the B side go? Well, the B side is there, but now it is the shorter piece. And the process is directly analogous. I'm going to slide. I'm going to do this for demonstration purposes, but normally you would not do what I'm about to do. I'm going to expose that B piece so you can see them sliding against each other. And I'm going to slide the A piece down so that the second line of the A piece is going to roughly match the first line of the B piece. If you have your little paper guides, in this case, use the 2A piece that I sent. I'm not sure that these numbers match what the UK group did, but look for a piece where there is not a staple between the long piece and the short piece, and the A piece is longer than the B piece. So again, we've got a short B piece and the long A piece with only 1 line of staples. So I'm going to straighten this out again. I'm going to flatten it so that you can see that again, we have the same thing represented with your paper guide and in the fabric. And again, I'm going to carefully, for demonstration purposes, flip this so you can see that I've got that second line of A on the other side is going to line up with that first line on this side. And the same thing here, where the B piece is fully covered by the A piece. So that's to the reason I'm showing this is to demonstrate how it looks with a long A piece and a short B piece. I'm going to go back to the one piece because it is simplest if you go in order, I think. So back to the one pieces. So you have this short piece of A on top of this long piece of B. So how do I actually pin this? So there's another kind of take it to the bank rule. We're going to pin vertical line to vertical line. So one of the goals here is that when you take your pieces from being wrong side to wrong side, and you do this fold, you're folding on this first line of B. When you do this fold, that the vertical lines of A will match the vertical lines of B. And that will be something that you can kind of, you can ease this a little bit, you know, manipulate the fabric to make this align. But it's best if we can pin it accurately now and sew it accurately now, so you don't need to ease and everything. It stays nice and flat on the garment. So vertical line to vertical line is how we're going to pin, and pin with a minimum number of pins as there are lines. So here on this one piece, you should have at least 4 pins when you're pinning, and that is because there are 4 vertical lines. So the pinning process looks as follows. We're not pinning exactly horizontal line to horizontal line. We're going to do something a little bit different. If you look at your paper guide, if you have it handy, at least Shelley, yours should reflect this, and I'm not sure that the UK ones do, but you can see in my example that that staple came out just a little bit off the line. And you can see that it's just a tiny bit inside the seam allowance, whereas it's right on the line on this top piece. And you notice once it's folded, that allows these 2 lines to match exactly, because there's a little bit of material that gets lost in this fold. So if you think about, you know, if you're rolling up a roll cake or something, how a lot of material is, you know, permanently trapped in that fold. That little bit of fabric is enough that these lines, that those lines won't align unless you give it that little bit of extra. So we're going to attempt to do the same thing with our A pieces, A and B pieces. I'm trying to recall. So I recommend, this is going to be a situation where you are pinning perpendicular to the direction you're sewing. And I recommend when you do this to pin towards yourself. You're less likely, because the hand is doing this as you're sewing, this motion, you're less likely to accidentally encounter the tip of the pin with your sewing hand when you are coming from the right, or sorry, when your pin is facing towards your body. So that's what I'm going to do here. I prefer for this to have the shorter side facing me, at least for these A pieces. So go ahead, and what you're going to attempt to do is you're going to, oops, mine are not aligned anymore, so I'm going to realign roughly second line of A to first line of B. So what I'm going to attempt to do is go in fairly perpendicular, which sometimes you avoid doing in sewing. You trust the sharpness of the needle, but in this case, okay, so you can see I'm way off mark. So that's easy enough to fix. I'm going to simply, I remember that I was about 2.5 millimeters too high from the line even. So I'm going to go about 3.5 down and try again. Let's just try my luck. Ooh, try not to step my finger. Okay, so I've gone in. So you're going straight in as though it's a crosshairs on a target or something. You're going straight through the cross on the front. I'm flipping to the back, and that's pretty good. That's almost dead on to the cross, but I want to do something a little bit different. If you remember, I was talking about how you lose a little bit of material in this fold. I'm actually going to back this out just enough so that the B piece loosens. I'm going to come back up. So what I've done is I've pinned, that might be a little too far, between 1 and 2 millimeters inside the seam allowance of the B piece is where I want my needle to exit. So going back to the A side, you can see that I am dead on in that cross. And when I flip, I am 1 to 2 millimeters in the seam allowance of the B piece. And that's what we want. We want to have a little bit of allowance for getting lost in that fold. And earlier with the previous cohort, I gave the option of doing direct crosshair to crosshair or doing it this way. And for those in the previous cohort who are listening to this, I've decided that I still think that's a fine alternative. So everyone who's listening to this, if you would prefer to do that for simplicity's sake, please do. However, I'm avoiding giving too many alternatives, like alternate methods to keep things simple in instruction. So I have come out. I went dead on in the crosshair. I came out dead on in the vertical line, but 1 to 2 millimeters above the horizontal line. And I'm going back in dead on the vertical line. If you can catch that seam allowance again. So you get both, you're going both directions, or both insertions are going to go through the seam allowance of the V piece if you can. And then you come out, and there you have your first pin. Sounded like Shelley may be the only person who's actually following along at this stage today. Is that right? So you had not yet cut your face. Have you done that?
I have cut it now.
Okay, great. Have you been able to follow along with this phase at all?
I'll probably go back and rewind it, and yes, my only thing is I cut the lines that were indicated, but it seems like I've only got, I've got one column left. I haven't got the same as you've got. So I don't know where I've gone wrong, because I was cutting the line as indicated. So I'm confused as to what's going on miss. So I'll not do any more. I'll just walk.
Do you mean? I'm sorry. I just noticed this piece may not. So does yours look like this, where it has, when you say one more column, does it look like you have a thick column, a thin column, and then seam allowance? Whereas I've got 2 thin columns here. Is that what?
Yes, I've got a thick column, a thinner one, and then 2 very narrow ones at the side.
Yours is correct. Golly, I've got 30 minutes of video. Maria, would you mind making an annotation on the video when I start talking about this fabric, that this should be labeled a 3, that this should say 3A?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can delete the other bits if you like.
Well, go ahead and leave them in. Just, that's what the 1A is supposed to look like. This is what 3A is supposed to look like. And that was, I think I was eager to have a demonstration ready I made this during a class once. So I just mislabeled this. So Sue, yours does look like this one. Is yours?
Yes, mine looks like that.
Wonderful. So this is correct.
Oh,
This is actually closer to 3A, and I imagine Shelley may have been experiencing the same confusion. If you, I don't know if you were thinking that closely about it, but
I was
so
following your paper, so I'm all good.
okay, great. Redundancy pays off. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and unpin and just do this once more. I don't know where my marking utensil is, or I would mark this. So anyone who's picking up at this point, this should be a 3, not a 1, because it has narrow, wide, narrow. So I'm going to put them flat again. So I've got my, imagine that this doesn't have the narrow or that it is the 3 piece. Either way, I have a short piece, a short A piece and a long B piece. And I'm going to pinch, so like I'm forming a mountain range where these 2 plates are coming together and pushing upward away from the table surface. So I've got the chalk side facing outward on both pieces. And I'm going to go ahead and lift it off the table and place it flat. Just like so. And I want the A piece facing so I can actually see that the A is right side up. And I'm going to slide the A piece down until the second line of A is going to roughly match the first line of B. And I want to go, the pin is going to, at every stage, going to insert and come out on a vertical line, both on the A side and the B side. So we're pinning vertical line to vertical line. I'm going to go straight on through the crosshair here at this second line of the A piece. So dead on. Let's see where I came out. Came on out pretty much dead on the B piece, but I'm going to, you can either pull the pin all the way out, or if you're feeling more confident in your dexterity, you can back it out until just the B piece loosens free without totally unpinning everything. And what you do, if you do that, if you do what I'm doing here, and you're kind of using your thumb and your forefinger to manipulate the placement of these 2 layers, go ahead and then use to take the fabric in so that you can see both the needle, and try to make it parallel. That will let you know that the 2 pieces are, or sorry, perpendicular. So it's coming straight, like you can see here, directly perpendicular to the fabric. And that's how you know that the pieces are aligned. You can do the same this direction. So that gives you a pretty good indication that that's aligned. I'm going to go, it may not be aligned perfectly vertical line to vertical line. So let's find out if this comes out on the vertical line on the other side. A little bit off. So I'm using my thumb and index finger to manipulate it a little bit. It's still not quite right, but that's pretty good. I would say this is adequate. So I'm going to hold that real close. You can see, well, can you? Yeah, you can kind of see. So on this side, I need something really fine point to point this. This chalk line is visible because this pin is slightly off the vertical line, but it's directly touching the chalk line at both insertion points. And I would say that's adequate. if you really want to, that if you're reviewing your work and you spot something like this and you've got everything else pinned, this is not a cause for alarm or concern. If everything is like that on the piece, maybe redo it. If anything is not even touching the chalk line, that might be cause for redoing that pin. So because I've got this pin on this end done, I'm going to do this opposite end. That will help me align these two a little more quickly. See how I did. Yeah, it's pretty good. At this point, though, I do want to check and make sure that I'm a consistent distance above the line. And I think I'm going to call that pretty good. I'm even a consistent distance of just being a little bit left of this vertical line too. So you can tell that they're pretty neatly aligned. I have to go through again. And there we have it. So I've begun pinning that A piece. And I said it previously, but I'll reiterate. I recommend a minimum of the number of vertical lines, pin the number of vertical lines, because every time you do that, you're going to be able to check to make sure that the fabric isn't warped, or for some reason that the vertical lines aren't matching front end and back. Because that's what we're looking for. We're looking to see that dead on through that point, out through the vertical line, and through the vertical line on the backside too. One more, and then we'll call this incorrect 1A piece, or mislabeled 3A piece. We'll call it done. Okay, I think that one might have come out a little close to that line, and I'm going to inspect why is that. It's because I went in a little above, so I'm still aligned, but you can hardly see it, but I'm slightly higher on that pin compared to the chalk line than I am on this one. And this light and the chalk aren't reflecting very nicely, but here in live and in person, I can see that this pin here is a little bit above that chalk line. So I'm going to call that okay. This looks great. This is what you will want before you begin sewing all of your pieces. If you would like, you can add an extra pin here, especially between the wider sections, but really this is plenty close. You'll start to see when we get to doing the frame that this spacing is plenty close for the stitch. So before we move on to questions for this, and then discussion of the corners for our next group of sewists, or sorry, for the existing cohort. Let me check something real quick. Got a little bit of twist in the material. I'm wondering if it's this pin. I'm looking at how this vertical line is not aligning well with this. That could be the actual warp of the material itself. So I'm going to try to align it and see if it stays flat with some manipulation. Okay, I think it was just friction holding it out of place. So before I move on to questions for this, I do want to address how you begin sewing the Namu Kibutsu on this. Actually, no, let's do questions on the pinning first before I start talking about sewing. Then we'll do sewing, and then we'll get to the squares for existing sewists. So Sue, Shelley, and I guess Julia too. I know that you've had Jan's in-person assistance, but are there any questions about this phase of pinning?
Yes, please, because I was confused with the letters and with the numbers and the number of columns. I don't think I quite got where 1A was positioned above B. So could you just flip that over and show me? whether
Yes.
I've got it. No, just turn it over.
Oh, okay. Oh, just turn it.
Yep.
So I'm going to do it with the paper aside
Okay.
as well, so that you can get both. So the second line of 1A is here,
Oh, I see. Right.
and the first line of 1B, and
Okay.
likewise here.
Yeah. So the
Is
second.
that what you have?
No, hadn't gone far. So the second line of
A.
Of A and the first line of B. Yes.
Yes.
I think I've got that.
You can do a test by putting that pin in this crosshair and
Yes.
seeing if it comes out on that first line here.
Thank you.
Confident from here?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. What about you, Shelley, Julia? Are y'all confident? I know you're already so, Julia.
I'm
but
adequate.
yeah, you've been able to follow along.
I think so. It's having the paper pieces is really helpful. I'm just not 100% sure on the 2 millimeters, but I'll measure and get that sorted.
Okay. Yeah, and I think consistency is the big key there. It doesn't have to be precisely like if you heard me say, I said between 1 and 2, but yeah, it's my eyes are not a ruler. As much as I like to think they are not. So a smidge, just a bit above the line, a little guy, just a few threads. I don't know how to describe it. Let me know if you do have questions. How about you, Julia?
Yeah, I'm fine. I've checked through it. They're all pinned up. Okay. I'm glad you went through that 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter stuff, because I wasn't quite sure about that, reading up on that. So that's been really helpful. And I've just kind of run back and checked everything's as it should be. So yeah, it's exciting times.
Yes. All the rest of the new cohort, I haven't shown you all where the instructions for the Rakasu. And these were technically created for instructors to use, but at Appamada, we've always allowed everyone to have access, just to so that we're all on the same page. Do note that if you're looking at the there are some things that we don't do the same. There are some things that we use different materials, and there's at least one place where the numbers for measurements are wrong. So take this with a grain of salt, but generally speaking, this is the foundation of what I'm using. To locate it, I'm going to first let me send the link in chat. So if you're here in class today, you can access it this way.
So to find Buddha's robe, the instructions for Buddha's robe, you go to Appamada, you type in appamada.org in your search menu, and you'll get this screen coming up, Appamada, Contemporary Zen Practice and Inquiry. You'll have a menu going across. If you're on your phone, the menu will be going down. So if you can see where my cursor is, you go to Study, you click on Study, and then this page will come up and you'll scroll down until on the left hand side, if you can see where my cursor is, there's Sewing Buddha's Robe there, and you click on that, and then you scroll down again and you'll see there's lots of lovely things to read as well about Sewing Buddha's Robe. But at the moment we're looking at the instructions, which are here, and we've got you can see where my cursor is, Introduction to Sewing Buddha's Robe, Fabric Layouts, and there we go, Rakasu Instructions. So we click on that, and then there they are, lots of instructions for sewing your Rakasu for you to scroll through and have a good read and to help guide you through.
Okay, so then I'm going to discuss how to begin. So once you have all 5 pieces pinned, go ahead and email me a photo of that, just so that there's, last time that actually ended up being quite beneficial. There were some that were pinned differently from the instructions. So go ahead and do send me a photo of the pinning, and I would love to see front and back. And I don't need, as long as you've got good lighting, your phone camera should be something I can zoom in and see everything I need to see. So you can, don't worry too much about getting close-ups. Just do all 5 panels all out in a row, you know, on a tabletop surface, and move the camera as far away as you need to capture all 5 in good lighting. Do all 5 on the front with the A side facing, and then flip them all over so it's the B side. If you can send me that photo, that'll just help us, you know, it's easier to offer feedback before you've started sewing. That's the simple way of saying it. So I'm going to describe how to begin sewing this. When I do the Namu Butsu stitch, I always give myself 3 times the length of the stitch I'm about to stitch. Sometimes you can get away with 2, but you'll always be able to do it with 3. So I'm going to measure out 1 length with my fingers here. I'm going to do a 2nd length and a 3rd length. So I'm going to cut it here. And got lucky and got it the first try. So you will be using knots for all of the face pieces. The entire construction of the face, you will be using the knot to start and to finish. So no need, you'll hear me, I'm sure some of you have already heard me discussing no knot or knotless methods of finishing. You don't need to worry about that at all yet. We're doing knots. So I'm going to do, so get your starting knot. I'm going to do the wraparound method. Did 4 loops. That may have come too loose. That turned out okay. So I've got a decent sized knot. It's perhaps a little oblong. No, that's good. So I don't like having this really long tail to deal with. So I'm going to pull. I'm going to pull it so that it's a little more similar in length. Pull the free end of the needle, that is, or the thread. And I do use a thimble to protect my fingers. Not required though, personal preference. So I'm going to start both right-handed and left-handed method or style. So we're going to ignore the first line of B piece and use the first line of the A piece as our reference for the stitch. So similar, just as you've been doing with your practice stitches, you're going to come up on the above the A line. You're going to do that a comfortable distance away from the edge, but still in the seam allowance. And then I'm going to go down to the right, as I've been doing, and up to the left, above the line. As I'm doing this, I am chanting Namu Butsu. Namu on the downstroke, or the initial insertion. Namu. And then Kie when I come up above the line on the other side. And then Butsu when I grab the needle point and pull through. And I'm going to continue that chant and that rhythm. Begin to embody the stitch. when you come to, I recommend don't attempt to cross unless you have experience and you're confident hand sewing. I recommend don't try to cross a pin with with the needle. So don't try to go down on this side of the needle and come up on that side of the needle of the pin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position my index and thumb in a position that will work for the stitch I'm about to make, to hold the two pieces in relation together. So my hand has become the pin. So I'm holding them in place together. I'm going to remove the pin, and then I am going to make the stitch. And that's just not to introduce any undesired twisty business. Sorry, I'm hearing noises and I'm wondering where they're coming from.
I really like twisty business. I'm going to use that if it's okay with you.
Please do, yeah. Goodness, and it's not just for sewing. There's twisty business all around us. Okay, so that's the basics of it. You're going to continue all the way until you get to the comfortably 1 or 2 full stitches into the seam allowance. And then you are going to finish with a knot on the back. And I did describe my method of finishing, with my finishing knot, I think last class or perhaps 2 classes ago when I was going through practice stitches. I believe I communicated that. And I think I've seen everyone who sent me photos of your stitch, I have seen the way that you end stitches. So that is the basics. If you need to pull stitches for some reason, because perhaps you didn't go all the way through, I recommend using the eye of your needle, the eye end of your needle to go under. That reduces the chance of splitting the thread. And to pull from the back just because there's more to work with. I'm going to go ahead and remove this so I have a reference piece again. Any more questions on this? Those of you in the new cohort.
I do have just one question about the thread.
Yeah.
So it's always the silk thread unless you say it isn't the silk thread?
Anytime you can see the thread on the Rakasu, it will be silk thread.
Okay.
And then yes, there's the only other 2 types of thread that we would be using, and you can use, they can be the same thread. There's going to be thread used for basting, and then possibly the same thread, possibly different. There's going to be a matching color thread used for the straps and the neck piece.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for asking. It's a good question. Okay, so corners, corners, corners. So as with any cutting, you've got the 3 lines with the center line being your cut line. So you have seam allowance on both sides. So it's probably self-explanatory, but I want to make clear this middlemost line, both directions are your cut lines. And there's just these 2 cut lines. That should yield 4.
John, can I ask a question before you continue?
Yes.
So the square that I have that gets cut into the 4 squares, it has to be measured for this for the big, because it's
We
large.
sent you a raw piece.
Yeah,
just kind of-
yeah.
okay.
So that I guess is number one, is to measure that.
Yes, and you'll use all the same principles you've used for
The frame.
if you think that the frame precisely. So when we talk about finding square and making your measurements, this one is small enough that even if you're a little off square, it won't. It's not going to reflect because there's not much length
Okay.
for that angle difference. Do
So
you have
this is
questions
on
about?
page 9, right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So the diagram is here. I think the key distinctions is that the seam allowance is slightly smaller at 0.8 centimeters, but the principle remains the same, that you should be able to measure from your baseline. You should be able to measure without moving your ruler.
Okay. So it's 8.4 square.
That's right. That's right. Are you confident?
Yeah, yeah, I could do that.
Okay. Does anyone have questions about the marking, measuring and marking of these?
About the marking of the direction of the grain
of
the
I
fabric.
don't believe. We haven't. So in my instruction, both with the teacher, I've mentioned from Green Gulch, and and with Peg, that never came up. You can identify the direction based on stretch. So if you pull the material and it doesn't stretch as much, the direction that has more stretch is counter the direction of the bolt. In the direction of the bolt will have less stretch. So I can tell here that the bolt, the fabric came off the bolt this way, and that this was the direction off the bolt. However, what I believe what this is relevant for is if you're not using a broadcloth, if you're using a silk that has, it's so that it matches. It's so that this piece will match the grain here.
So should I try to have the stretch vertical or horizontal, or just ignore this
I would ignore this
instruction? Ignore it.
for our material. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Good question. Thank you. Okay, so I'm actually going to keep this diagram up because there's two different ways to, once you've cut your squares, there's two different methods to fold. So you are going to want to have your your iron handy for this, and it is. I'm not going to mince terms. This is very fiddly, and you may have to unpin and repin a couple of times. It gets especially sort of harrowing as you are moving in a direction, but it is manageable as long as you take your time and you're ironing between steps. So there's two different methods you can use to get these corners. And the ones in the instructions are going to be this B method here. And there's also this alternate method of the A method. The first person who suggested it would be possible to me was Lynn Moore. And if y'all know, in this class, she asked, well, why can't we do the pocket fold, and which is what this is, and that's a great idea. So for the A method, you're going to be folding in from the side that does not have the chalk lines. This is so creased, it's hard to demonstrate, but you're going to have no chalk lines showing as you begin. And you're going to fold in a corner, exposing chalk lines, so that you have this line should be in line with that here. And I don't think it says to use a hera with doing this, but I think it would actually be really helpful. to use a hera when you do the marking and measuring. So that, consider that an optional step. The instructions don't call for it, but it might be useful here, especially if you're doing this method A. So you fold in your corner like so. This line will match the chalk line on the other side, and same here. They should be parallel and lined up. And this, to the best of your abilities, should fall on that crosshair of the chalk line. Next, you're going to fold in one side. And to do this, you must have already folded in this corner. So I'll actually use this edge as an example. So you should have both of your corners folded in towards the center before you attempt to fold in that edge. So both corners on that on an edge must be folded in before you fold this inward. So what might make sense is to have your press handy, press all four corners down first, then begin the work of getting these folded over. Once you have both edges down, work to get this opening. I can hardly see it. I can't really pick it up though and get it closer. Work to get this where these two folds touch as near as possible, and then pin. If you have fine pins and thicker pins, this would be a good time to use fine pins. So you'll want to get that in, and the purpose is to get this corner nice and sharp.
So John, excuse me, is the side fold going underneath the corner fold?
No. Underneath, yes, in terms of when it will be on the correct side. So you'll do the corner fold first, and then you'll fold down both sides.
Oh, I see.
So
I see. It does it kind of at the same time.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, the folding of the two pieces of the corner folds the side in a way. Anyway.
Well, yeah, it's the same fold. In fact,
Yep.
it's,
Yep.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay. Cool. So I recommend pinning like this if you're doing this method. So you've got pins coming in at perpendicular and parallel, not 45 degrees. That's to catch both pieces of fabric. So the other method, and I don't have anything pre-creased for this. It's currently attached to the donation Rakasu I'm making. Yeah, they're all sewn down. Is this method here, and this is the method that is described verbally in the instructions. So for this method, you will fold down two parallel sides. So you'll fold down, so using this example, folding the top down, you're going to fold the top and the bottom in towards so you're going to do like so, where you're folding again away from the facing side towards the side without chalk. You're going to do both the top and the bottom inward. You're going to press that down really well, and then you're going to do the right and the left inward. So you can see it's first line down, that's where that fold line, that chalk line is. Then you're going to fold in this second line. Once you have that, this might be a challenging little bunch. And more importantly, you're going to find, I can demonstrate this here. You're going to find that this little bit here is dangerously close to being exposed on the front. And so you're going to make like a fraction of a fold inward. You're just going to like a half fold back, like so. And that's going to be just enough fold that you can get a pin in but you may not be able to get a pin out of it. If you cannot get a pin out, often with thicker needles, I think even, or pins, even standard gauge pins, this might be too tight to make work. But with fine pins, you can do it. You may not be able to get it out in that. Do your best though to get it still, so you can see this little half fold ends before these two pieces do. And these, if you can't get it through where you've got this bunch, this little semi-fold, try to get it through these pieces at least. So you are getting both front and back pieces. If not, one was okay. Just make sure you can, oops, see, and I'm doing, for example, here. Well, no, you can kind of see it. You can go all the way through the front, though, is my point on this. It should not be so warped that the holes will remain visible on the finished garment. And you are going to be sewing over with Namu Butsu stitch right where this pin is, so it should not be visible, even if there is a little hole stretched. So, so one way or another, you either have 4 things that are in the instructions. You can see that's why these come out at angles like this. In the digital instructions, you can even squint your eyes and really zoom in and see that it looks like this with that little semi-fold. So you either got one of these or 4 of those, or you've got 4 of these.
And either is acceptable. There's no pro or con. It's just personal preference, how your brain works and how your fingers can work.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. Yeah.
Okay.
The next part is something that I just said I don't want to give alternatives, and here I am giving 2 different alternatives for 2 different steps. This phase, so this is something I'm still exploring. So the way that Appamada does it, and the way I was taught to do it, is this whole assembly with the pins. You pin it, and then you immediately baste it with the pins to the garment. So your basting threads are going to actually be going all the way through. You don't catch the back, but you do baste around. Yeah, you're basting here. So that's, I'll describe that method first, but there is another method, and I'll try to get to it before the end of the class. So if you want to baste, start on one of the edges on the frame side, and start. This is actually an embarrassing example. I wasn't following my own instructions. Start close to the stitch, or the corner. And the reason for this is because you're going to start your final stitch, your actual Namuki Butsu stitch, in one of these 2 corners. So begin basting. You can go all the way through on the frame side if you would like. But when you're basting onto the fabric itself, don't go through the silk. The silk is so easy to it shows needle marks, pinholes so much more readily, and it doesn't kind of revert back to its original, or revert back to where you can't see it the way cotton does. So if you're going to baste directly to the fabric, don't go all the way through. Stop at the interfacing or the face layer, but not all the way through, and baste around, as you can see I've done here. So that is one method. And I'm going to describe how to start sewing after I describe the other method, because that is the same regardless of which method you choose. The other method, and this is what that Green Gulch teacher I mentioned that I've been studying with, this is what she teaches. And part of it is because she actually sends this prepared for her remote sewers. Anne and I have agreed that we don't want to do that. So y'all are still cutting and folding on your own, but you actually do the basting here at this phase. So you're going to make, instead of having pins, a pinned mess that you're trying to baste to your face and frame, you're going to have a basted little package that you pin to the face and the frame. So the steps would be very similar. You're going to take your, in my case, I like a white cotton thread because it's highly visible. You're going to take your cotton thread and just do a small running stitch all the way around so that it holds the fabric the way that you've pinned it. You do want to be pretty careful at this phase. You can see how much the fabric is kind of twisted and warped and bent because of the pins. So as you're going, do be careful to try to get it everything straight, everything parallel. And just take your time with these. Get your best lighting you have possible. Don't try to do this on an airplane. You know, do give this some care. And either at this phase, if you're basting it separately, or at the phase where you're basting it to the face, your care and diligence will pay off, and you won't have to fuss as much when you're actually sewing it down. So you've either, and then if you baste around the edges, you will then pin 2 pins, only 2, going through the these 2 sides here, or in through this corner, not going through the silk, and out through the front. So let me try to demonstrate that more clearly. So you can either pin, and this is based on how you want the tips of pins poking out while you're sewing. So you can either say I want to start in this corner. I can pin in here and come out there. And I want to do that further in than where my Namu Butsu stitch is going to be, and try to catch the frame all the way through, but not coming all the way through at the back if you can avoid it. So we want to here and then one here. The alternate method is pinning like so. And if you do this just as before, you don't want to come through the silk on the back. I don't think the pinning is super critical, honestly, if you're going to be pinning a basted square to the corner. The distance in from the corner is stated in the instructions. I recommend you make those chalk marks before you begin placing. I think that's the basics for getting it ready to sew.
Question, John. So if we do the second method of the basting, where you baste first and then you pin the basted square to the piece, obviously you're taking those original pins out and putting the 2 pins in.
Yes. So you will have all of these pins will be gone by the time you're done basting.
Thank you.
So once you either have a basted little package, or you have the pinned thing ready to baste, and then you've basted it on as we have here, you're going to begin sewing. And this is where the basted package value begins to shine, and the reason that I am considering it as the only method that I teach. So you're going to begin sewing at one of the corners away from, on the frame, but away from the corner of the Rakasu itself. You're going to start either here or here, depending on handedness, depending on comfort. And then you're going to sew toward the corner, either direction. And you're going to focus only on getting this line straight and aligned to the chalk line that's with it, or that accompanies it. Once you have your first line done, and I recommend doing it all in one go. So I would want 3 times as much thread as this, plus this, plus this, plus this. So one long piece is what you're going to be using to sew this. And you're going to be using the hide the tail unreinforced method of knotless start and knotless finish. So you've done your knotless start, so you've got a little tail coming out here. You've got stitches running to the corner, and you've got your needle safely out here somewhere, and you've got your thread coming out. At this time, if you have done the pre-basted method, you have the opportunity to adjust your pins to see if this has moved things or introduced a warp or what have you. So once you reach this first side and you've got your little tail coming out here, your one line of stitches, and you've got your thread and needle off over here somewhere, you can actually adjust and reconfigure any pins that you have in place at this stage. Then you do this, and at that point you're kind of locked in. With these two, according to this teacher, you should not need you should not need pins for the basted package at all once you get these sides down, because this piece is so small. If you have pre-basted, of course, that is not going to be part of the equation. At that point, it is better to make sure that your basting is accurate as it can be. And I'll admit, but this is really hard, and I'm rarely satisfied with my own work at this. So do the best that you can. Give it the care and attention that you would give a child, but as you know, with children, you're never going to address a child perfectly. So do the best that you can. Are there any questions? We're at 101.
I do have a couple of questions. One is, so it's okay that it looks like the NKB stitch will go over quite a lot of the basting and kind of catch it, but then it's easy enough just to pull the basting thread out from under the NKB stitch at the end.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. You are right. The basting should be able to be removed without issue. You will need to be careful, of course, you're removing only the basting and not the NKB. But you're correct. Okay. Yeah, the basting stays in place until the corners or the square is completely finished.
Great, thank you. And then my final question is, as I've been using the NKB stitch so far, it does not form a straight line on the back. So is that just something that I need to take a practice piece to figure out how I get it slanted on the front but straight on the back?
I think it's okay. This is a lot of material. It's not going to be perfect. It's so many layers of material. It is
okay.
You can either go all the way through. So you can go down and then pull your needle all the way through the back and then up. That's fine. I find it hard to align that way. This line was done with that method. I'm always experimenting when I'm doing these test ones. And this line was done my normal method, but you can see how short that got, because it's really hard to get enough material when you're keeping your needle in the material the whole time.
Okay, so it would be acceptable if the back ended up like
yes. Oh yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Certainly. Yeah, that looks great.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's super helpful.
So John, question: the Namu Butsu stitch does go all the way through?
That's right. Yeah. So this is going. So this is going to be visible on the silk.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So John, my question related to the stitches as well, and about the slant, because on the instructions, which I've got online, if I enlarge it, it actually looks like the stitches are straight and not actually slanted at all. And I just wanted to check that. Yeah, on that
in this
on
photo.
that picture, they look like they're just straight and no 45-degree angle. So I just
They kind of do.
yeah.
No, this is normal. The Namu Butsu, the same one that you've been doing the whole time. It's so like these are probably closer together than certainly any other one that you can see. They are the angle's less consistent. These are just really challenging. So if you end up doing it so small that you can't tell if it's a straight line or if it's straight or slanted, yeah, I think with these, yeah, give it the care that you can. You'll find very quickly what I'm talking about, that these are just tricky. But yes, it is to the best of your ability without causing strain. It is the standard Namu Butsu stitch.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, we're
I know we're
so
right
late.
at time, but I just wanted to say I'm completed.
You finished today.
Yes.
Congratulations. Wonderful.
Wow. Hold it up, Trudy. Oh, look at that.
Oh,
Beautiful.
Oh, I love the lining.
That's my
Yeah, so
lining.
nice.
And
That's really nice. Yeah.
I'm sharing the lining with Catherine. So the Rakasu envelope that I'm sewing for my Rakasu is going to have the same lining in.
Oh,
beautiful.
Oh,
Nice.
that was a tricky little thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to see that you were able to do it with just instruction. I mean, I'm guessing.
Yes, I sort of mocked it up before I had a little go because it's a strange
right.
beastie. But
It is. Yeah. The chalk line of the C line to the sew line of the on the front and the back. It's definitely, but it's good to see that you got it.
thank you, and thank you for all your help. I won't be here next week because it's a Hakomi weekend, but I'll come back for the following on because I have another envelope to sew.
Wonderful. Very good. Then we can bow out, one to the altar and one to each other. So good to see you all. And next normal sewing next week.
Thanks, everybody.
thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye, John.
See you all
Bye.
soon.
I think I've done practically.